everyone. Kay Berkner here today with Dr. Tom Phelan, author and creator of 123 Magic, as well as the author of The Manager Mom Epidemic. Dr. Phelan, welcome.
Good morning, Kay.
How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. We had the grandkids and their two cats over last night, so I'm covering the evening's entertainment.
I bet. Kids and cats. That sounds like a party, certainly.
Yeah.
Okay, so today we are talking about a brand new topic. It's not one that we've discussed here before, but it's definitely one that's really important, and that is childhood obesity. So, Dr. Phelan, can you start by talking to us about what is obesity? What is the definition there? I think the word gets thrown around a lot, but what does it actually mean?
It does. The nitty gritty of it is it's an accumulation of fat, fat cells in a person's body that they carry around with them on a regular basis, and it's excessive. So we all have fat in our bodies, but it's too much fat. And the other thing about it is it's associated with health risks as life goes on, and especially as you get into an adulthood. It's an unhealthy way to be for whoever is doing that. But it's basically fat, too much, carried around, health risk.
Got it. And so what has the trend around childhood obesity looked like in the last couple decades?
It's bad. It's about 3 or 4 times more than it was, previously, and going up. So we have, I think it's like of the 2 to 19-year-olds, 18.5% would qualify as obese. About 20% of the the older teens. Preschoolers tend to be less obese, less heavy. So you see about maybe 14% of the 2 to 5-year-olds, and then it's going up to about 14% of the 6 to 11-year-olds, and then more than that. But almost 20% of our 2 to 19-year-olds are carrying around too much fat and have this health risk.
And so when you talk about health risks, what kind of health risks are we talking about?
Well, you're talking about the bad guys. I mean, you're talking about cancer possibilities, you're talking about cardiac possibilities, you're talking about diabetes, you're talking about stroke. And a lot of these things aren't necessarily going to happen in childhood, but if the child is obese, then they're set up for those kind of things. Premature mortality, if you add it all up, you see people that are obese or overweight, dying sooner than their peers.
Sure. And one of the things that it's talked about when it comes to obesity is there's different types of factors that can cause that, right? Like there's both genetic factors and non-genetic factors. Can you share what some of those are and how they might impact kids?
Yeah, there's some genetic factors, and I'm not an expert on the genetic factors, but there's some that can be passed on from parents to kids. But the interesting thing about if you look at the logic of it, if you have an increase 3 or 4 times in the rate of obesity in the last 4 decades or something like that, that can't be genetic, because the human genome doesn't have time to evolve and change in 4 decades. So you have to look at non-genetic factors and the things that are causing that. So a lot of people say, well, there's genetic, and look at the parents, look at the kids. That's true, but there's much more to it than that. And I don't know if it's fortunately or unfortunately, but the non-genetic factors are the ones that are really playing a powerful role these days and in the last number of years.
And what are some of those non-genetic contributors?
Yeah, the two that you think of are the two obvious ones, and this is and the two most frustrating ones, I think, is a big decrease in physical activity. And so you see that, and that you can attribute. You think back, I was reading something recently about the development of radio and television. And television, came along in the 50s, actually existed before, but not in the same mass way. But television comes along big time in the late 50s and the 60s and stays there. And then kind of gives birth to other baby screens, if you want, which are, computers, iPads, cell phones, video games, all these kinds of things. But what you see from that is a massive decrease in physical activity. I saw one statistic once, and it said that for every hour additional TV you watch, a person watches in a day, they will add 1 to 2% of body weight, and so on. So drastic drop in physical activity. And the other thing that's going on is a drastic increase in the intake of calories, otherwise known as really, really tasty, good foods and drinks that are all over the place. And they're so much fun to drink and eat that it's not funny. But you put the two together, the inactivity plus the calorie intake, that's where you get the problem.
Yeah. So what are some kind of really, you said those are two of the most obvious problems. So what are some solutions that parents might put into place when it comes to things like inactivity and calorie intake?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing you have to think about is who's going to be doing whatever it is you're doing. And if you think of this as something that you're going to impose on your child, you are going to have a hard time, because the research seems to show that diet, diet, diet kind of stuff does not work. And oftentimes the biggest risks for kids will occur when the parents are obese or overweight. And so what we really need is to do something that is as a family. And you'll find, and I know a lot of parents have done this, and I've worked with parents over the years, they see that, their child is overweight or obese or something like that. So the parent's going to put disciplinary restrictions on them to try and get them to shape up. And it causes a lot of battles. It causes a lot of sneaking food. Kid has potato chips under the mattress, candy in the closet, all these kind of things, a lot of sneaking around, a lot of bad scenes. And it just doesn't work in the long run.
Yeah, I was, as you were saying that, I was thinking, this sounds a lot more like a start behavior than a stop behavior. So more about, rather than forbidding certain foods, instead trying to kind of build in healthy routine instead.
I think so. And you think of a couple of things, it's there's a lot of places people can start that are fairly straightforward. So you think of the two big causes is, reduced physical activity and calorie intake. And so if you do look at reduced physical activity, what can you do to increase physical activity? And that means, the AAP, the American Academy of Pediatrics, has had these recommendations for screen time for kids for a long time. Well, nobody's doing it. And the reason they're not doing it is the screens are the world's best babysitters. So mom and dad, you give the kid the screen and a bag of potato chips and off they go. And you're free to do whatever you want to. So I think we have to think about, what can we do, just as one thought, what can we do with the kids? One of the best things you can do with the kids is exercise with the kids. So if you had a mom or dad who was obese and a child who was heading in that direction, they could say, okay, we're going to walk 3 miles a day, no screens, or anything like that. One of the things I've recommended for years is, since a lot of people spend so much time on the cell phone, that they increase their activity by doing what I call phone walking. And that is, when you're talking on the phone, get up and walk. You'd be surprised. You can walk miles and miles and miles and miles and miles in an average week, because you like to talk to your sister in California or your brother in Canada or something like that. So you have to look for kind of friendly, starting places to increase activity and change the nature of the calorie intake. As far as the calorie goes, one thing that people can do is start eating breakfast, but a reasonable breakfast, and eat it with your kids. We skip breakfast a lot. A lot of people skip breakfast as a dietary maneuver, which is notorious for not working.
Yeah, absolutely. I've actually just started reading a book. It's Ikigai, which is a Japanese concept of like purpose in life. But one of the things they were saying is there are these blue zones across the world, right? And in these blue zones, people live longer than any place else. And they said one of the common factors across these blue zones is that people are very active, but they're not like doing CrossFit every day. They walk instead of driving. They are out in the garden working. They're outside doing things and moving around. And I think, as a parent who has energetic young children, right? Like the idea of like, putting together an exercise routine for all of us feels that feels hard and that feels heavy. But the idea of, okay, I'll go out and we're going to pick up the sticks in the yard so that we don't hit them with a lawnmower when we go out. We're all going to go on a nature walk. Even just doing something that is a more gentle physical activity that's still active it's helpful, and it's a good place to start that doesn't feel super intense.
I think you're right, because I think you hit the nail on the head, because if you think of, you say, okay, these are the two things that cause obesity. What do we need to do? We need to diet and exercise. Well, gee, that really sounds like a lot of fun, doesn't it? No, it doesn't. And that is opposing the monsters here of tasty food and fun video games. Now, there's the fun. You want me to diet and exercise when I get these video games and this tasty food? I mean, that's the war. And it's got to be, as you were saying, I think, sort of reframed and thought of differently, because you're made to exercise. People like moving, and so on. You're also made to eat, and people like eating, but you have to find some reasonable balance and some way of doing it that works for your family.
Yeah. And I think, when you talk about eating that, like, it's hard to be like, we're not having candy cereal for breakfast. We're going to have, something different. We're not having cupcakes as a snack. But, one of the things that you talk about in the Manager Mom epidemic is really getting the kids involved in doing things that contribute to the family in a meaningful way. And one of the examples you talk about is making meals and making dinner. And I think that's probably a perfect tactic to integrate here as you try to work your family's diet into a healthier place, is enrolling the kids in picking out what foods are going in there and learning how to prepare them and planning them and making them and serving them. It's a great way to get buy-in, right? To do something that, you're moving away from this fun of sugary or processed foods, but you're moving into kind of family fun and also meaning on the other side.
I think you're right, and I think if you add to that, take another step with that, and you mentioned it briefly, I think, and that's shopping with your kids. So you you make the list. It's one thing if you think you're doing a restrictive diet with a child, and you've got regular chips in the house, 14 grams of fat per bag. Okay, well that you're behind the eight ball to begin with. If you don't have that stuff in the house, or the real sugary cereals and stuff, and you shopped for them and you discussed it beforehand, so you have the other things, they'll eat what's available, and you don't have to be so restrictive, but it can be, better stuff for you. But if you get the kids to buy into it, and getting them to buy in and doing it together, doing it yourself, I think are real helpful. It's a real tough nut to crack. The research on the treatment for obesity and so on, I have to say, it's not real encouraging. About half the families can do something with it, and half the families don't. That's not a real good, especially as the kids get older. It's pretty clear as kids are younger, they're more malleable. They get to be 6 to 11, they're less malleable. Older teens, even less malleable, and then adults are the worst.
Yeah. So when you talk about challenges, I've heard the acronym FAFH. Can you tell us what that stands for, and kind of how it contributes here?
Yeah, this is a big contributor. It's who has time to cook anymore. FAFH is food away from home. And it's a toughie, because these people, you look at McDonald's, Dunkin' Donuts, basket, that stuff tastes great. I hate to admit it, but that stuff is wonderful. You don't want to make a meal out of it necessarily on a regular basis, but that's what we do. It's like less than half the families now cook things at home. It requires preparation, it requires planning, and it can be, well, sometimes it's more expensive, sometimes it's not. But FAFH, more salt, more sugar, more fat, bigger portions. And that's what you get with FAFH. But you're busy, you worked all day, you're rushing home. What are we going to do for dinner? Well, we just passed McDonald's. There you go. And it's not like you can't get anything healthy at McDonald's, but you tend not to.
Yeah, because the other stuff tastes better.
That's right.
And it's so easy to just say that one thing instead. So how do obesity or being overweight interact with psychological and emotional issues in kids?
Yeah, and well, in the ways that you'd expect, and in a bad way, and it's sort of a reciprocal relationship. So, say somebody who's overweight or obese, they will tend to be socially ostracized, and they may be teased and stuff more often. So they go home, and there's the food, there's the comfort food. So they eat the comfort food, which results in them becoming heavier, more teasing and stuff, more comfort food. You can see the vicious circle. The research is showing that you know, if you are obese, you have more of a tendency toward anxiety, more toward depression, and so on. And these are often involved with some of the social difficulties that go along with that. So you get a, you know, vicious circle that kind of feeds on itself over a period of time.
Yeah, and I just want to clarify something. We've had a comment on our video here saying that weight stigma is the issue and not obesity, and saying we should try encouraging kids to find movement they enjoy, eat a variety of healthy foods. And I think that's what we're saying here, is that we're not talking about being super restrictive or saying you can't do things or punishing kids at all. That's exactly what we're saying is find movement that they like, find activity that they like, that you can all do together, and then find positive ways to educate about and learn about and implement in the home healthy eating, and involve your kids in that, because the more that they start doing that when they're kids, you know, Dr. Phelan, like you said, kids are more malleable when they're younger. So if you ingrain those good habits early on, then they're more likely to carry those healthy habits into adulthood, I think.
That's exactly right. And the person mentioned weight stigma, and you know, that is a problem. So weight stigma, if it's from other people directed against you, you know, that's some of the, you know, teasing and bullying and so on. If it's you directing it against yourself, what's that? That's a self-esteem problem. And self-esteem problems go along with weight problems as well. So yeah, the solution, if there's going to be one, is to find new ways of eating and new ways of moving. And easier said than done, but that kind of, you know, hits the nail. And I have to say there's probably a third thing with that, and that is the treatments that seem to work the best are family-based treatments. So everybody's doing it together.
Got it. Terrific. So, you know, you mentioned family-based treatments. What should families be doing? Is there anything families should be doing beyond what we've already discussed? You know, finding healthy, fun movements that everybody can enjoy, learning about healthy habits, preparing healthy meals together, not eating food away from home so much, that type of thing. Are there other things that families can and should be doing to create a healthier environment and a healthier lifestyle for themselves and their kids?
Yeah, I think you know, we're talking about a parenting perspective to start with here. So we're talking about a parent sees, I have a child, they're overweight or obese, and I've got to do something about that. But the other task, equally difficult and equally important, is I've got to do that for myself. And so again, the research is pretty, if you have one obese parent, you're a child, you have one obese parent, the risk is this. You have two obese parents, the risk is that. It's double, it's bigger. So we have a parent trying to do something that now they're the adult. They've got their ingrained habits and all that. I want what's good for my kid. I've got to do it for myself. I want my child to change, I got to change myself. And that's a, you know, massive task. So the perspective can't just be a parenting one. It's got to be, oh boy, this is good for me too. And how am I going to go about, you know, accomplishing that?
Sure. So you mentioned that this can be a self-esteem, like if it's a kid looking at themselves and saying, I'm not happy with how I look, and that can be a self-esteem issue. Obviously, as parents, we should not be saying to our children anything about, you know, the size of their body, or, you know, talking about their weight in a negative way, and rather talking about being healthy. If your child does come to you and they are having self-esteem issues based on their weight, and they are genuinely obese, right? Because there's a whole separate conversation about children who are having self-esteem issues based on their weight, but they're actually at a healthy weight, so there's something else going on. So that's not what we're talking about right here. What we're talking about is if a child is heavier, if they are obese or trending to obesity, and they are having self-esteem challenges around that, what should you as a parent say to them? Obviously, you don't want to say, yeah, you've been looking pretty chunky lately. Like, that's completely the wrong thing to say. So what should you as a parent say that validates what they're feeling? Because obviously you don't want to just negate their feelings if they're feeling in a certain way. So how can you validate their feelings, but not make them feel worse, right? And help to start guiding them onto a better path? Like, what does that conversation look like if you're the parent?
Yeah, first thing you want to do is what we call sympathetic listening. So you want to listen, and your goal with sympathetic listening is to understand what the other person is saying and communicate to them that you understand what they're saying. So you're going to put on your listening shoes, and you're not going to suggest anything about what to do about it in the beginning. So it's listen, 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 and that's in the beginning. So it's not like you feel that your weight is a concern, and you feel like you don't look good, in school or whatever, or other kids have been teasing you. This is something you feel really bad about this. How long has this been going on? What kind of thoughts do you have about it? Have you ever thought about what you would like to do to change it, and so on? The outcome of that conversation is not going to be solutions. If you go from that to solutions, okay, well, you're going to have to cut down. I don't want you eating more potato chips, no more dessert, all this kind of stuff. Bad move. The outcome of that first listening conversation is going to be, how about, would it be okay with you if you and I put on our thinking shoes and we research this maybe a little bit, we look into it and think about and look for what options we have. Now, in the parent's mind too, the parent's mind is going to be have to be thinking then, is this something I want to do myself? Do I need to do it? Am I overweight or am I obese? So if we're going to have that conversation, then I'm going to have to be involved in it as well. So then the second part is to review different strategies. And there, as you know, there are a billion of them. Somebody said once, the reason there's so many diets is that none of them work. And that's a little bit cynical, but tough job. So anyway, the first thing is listen, listen, listen. Second thing is make a contract to explore the subject. And then the third thing is to gradually put together another negotiated contract about what you're going to do about it with them. So it's go slow. And if you don't think you have the wherewithal to do that as a parent, then you want to get a consultant, friendly mental health professional, nutritionist some of the time, that can help you put together your plan. But when a lot of parents, kid says stuff like this, you feel bad for them. So you try and give them realistic or unrealistic. You look just fine to me. Well, that's a lie. Okay, let's not lie to the kids. Let's share their concern and go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Chandra commented in our comments here that when kids do get put on restrictive diets or really intense exercise regimens, a lot of those people, as they grow into adulthood, then have to sort of heal their relationship, is the term that she used, heal their relationship with exercise and with food, because it was, they didn't grow up with a healthy one. So what we're looking at doing is, creating a healthy relationship with exercise and with food for your kids. And then if you're a person as a parent who doesn't have that healthy relationship or didn't have that healthy relationship when you were a kid, this is an opportunity for you to start healing that relationship as well alongside your children.
Yeah, I think you want to, the problem is too much fun of the wrong kind if you want. And so what we want is fun of the right kind, not sainthood or restrictions or exercise misery. We want fun of a different sort. And that's what you're looking for.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Phelan. This has been a really interesting topic to explore, and I hope that it's been helpful for the people who joined us and if you're watching this video later.